The Broken Promise. The corner office on the 32nd floor overlooked the sprawling cityscape of San Francisco, the evening lights beginning to twinkle against the darkening sky. Ethan Sullivan stood with his back to the door, his tall frame silhouetted against the panoramic view. At 32, he was already making waves in the tech industry, his startup valued at millions after just 3 years. "You can't be serious," he said, his voice dangerously quiet as he finally turned to face Vanessa Mitchell. Vanessa stood her ground, though her hands trembled slightly. "I wouldn't joke about this, Ethan. A baby, now?" He ran his fingers through his dark hair, his hazel eyes narrowing. "Do you have any idea what I'm in the middle of? The Series B funding is next month. I'm about to close deals with investors who will take GrowthSphere international." "I didn't plan this," Vanessa replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging inside her. "But it happened, and I thought you deserved to know." Ethan laughed, a hollow sound that echoed against the minimalist decor of his office. "Deserve to know? That's rich." He paced across the polished floor, the setting sun casting long shadows through the blinds. "This will ruin everything I've worked for." "This isn't just about you," Vanessa said, one hand unconsciously moving to her stomach. "This is about a life we created." "We?" Ethan's voice hardened. "There is no we in this equation, Vanessa. There's you making a decision that will destroy my life." He slammed his hand against his desk, the sound like a gunshot in the quiet room. "I can't do this. I won't." The words hung between them, heavy and final. Vanessa felt something inside her crumble, not because she was surprised, but because deep down she had expected this reaction. The man before her wasn't the same one who had once whispered dreams under starlit skies. Success had changed him, hardened him. "I see," she whispered, her blue eyes never leaving his face. "I'm sorry to have wasted your time." She turned toward the door, dignity intact despite the tears threatening to spill. As her hand touched the doorknob, she paused. "You'll regret this someday, Ethan. Not the success or the money, but this moment right here." The door closed quietly behind her, and Ethan was left alone with the growing darkness and the distant sounds of a city that never slept. He told himself he'd made the right choice, that nothing could stand in the way of what he'd built. But as night fell completely, bringing with it a silence that seemed to echo with accusation, doubt crept in like a shadow. 3 weeks later, Vanessa watched the city skyline disappear in her rearview mirror. Her apartment was emptied, her resignation letter submitted, her old life boxed away. The highway stretched before her, leading north along the coast to a town she'd only visited once during a weekend getaway years ago. Pinewood Cove welcomed her with salt-tinged air and the soothing rhythm of waves against rocky shores. The small coastal town seemed to exist in a different dimension from the high-pressure world she'd left behind. Here time moved more slowly, measured by tides rather than deadlines. She found a small apartment above a flower shop, owned by an elderly woman named Dorothy Wilkins, who took one look at Vanessa's tired eyes and offered her not just a place to stay but a job among the blossoms. "Plants don't judge," Dorothy had said with a kind smile. "And neither do I." The months passed in a blur of morning sickness, prenatal appointments, and quiet evenings spent watching the ocean. Vanessa spoke to her unborn child every night, promising a life filled with love even if it wouldn't include a father. When Olivia Rose Mitchell arrived on a stormy April morning, her tiny fists clenched and her lungs powerful, Vanessa felt a love so overwhelming it made everything else fade into insignificance. The baby had a dusting of dark hair, and when she finally opened them, hazel eyes that were unmistakably Ethan's. "It's just you and me now, little one," Vanessa whispered, holding her daughter close. "And that's more than enough." As the seasons changed, Olivia grew from a baby into a toddler, her laughter filling their small apartment with joy. Vanessa settled into the rhythms of Pinewood Cove, learning the names of regular customers, discovering hidden beaches, finding friendship with other single parents at the local playground. The pain of Ethan's rejection never completely disappeared, but it dulled, overshadowed by the daily miracles of watching her daughter grow. By the time Olivia turned 5, she was a whirlwind of energy and questions, with her father's dimpled smile and quick mind, but Vanessa's compassionate heart. Life wasn't perfect, money was often tight, and there were nights when Vanessa wondered what might have been. But it was theirs, built from scratch with love as its foundation. What Vanessa didn't know was that fate had other plans, and the past she'd left behind was about to come looking for her. Chance encounters. The autumn breeze carried the scent of pine and salt as Ethan Sullivan stepped out of his rental car onto Pinewood Cove's main street. 5 years had transformed him from an ambitious startup founder into the CEO of one of the most influential tech companies on the West Coast. GrowthSphere's success had exceeded even his wildest expectations, bringing wealth and recognition beyond measure. Yet something was missing. A hollow space he filled with more work, more acquisitions, more empty victories. Mr. Sullivan, we'll meet the realtor at 4 to tour the waterfront property. His assistant, Julian, reminded him as they walked toward the small hotel where they'd be staying. The local development board has arranged dinner afterward. Ethan nodded absently, his attention caught by the quaint storefronts lining the street, so different from the glass and steel metropolis he called home. I still don't understand why WavePoint Technologies chose to headquarter in a town this small. Founder grew up here, Julian replied, checking his tablet. They've developed an impressive marine research software platform despite the location. Their team is small but incredibly talented. They reached the Harborview Inn, a Victorian building with a fresh coat of blue paint and hanging flower baskets swaying gently in the breeze. Ethan's plan was simple: acquire WavePoint, absorb their tech, relocate the valuable employees, and be back in San Francisco within 3 days. I'll check us in, Julian offered. Heading toward the entrance, Ethan remained outside, his gaze drawn to the park across the street where children played among falling leaves. Something about their laughter made his chest tighten unexpectedly. He'd been working non-stop for so long that moments of simple joy had become foreign to him. A small girl with dark hair caught his attention as she climbed determinedly up the slide, her tiny face set in concentration. There was something oddly familiar about her, though Ethan couldn't place what. He watched as she reached the top triumphantly, only to lose her balance on the descent. The child tumbled sideways off the slide with a startled cry. Before he could think, Ethan was moving, crossing the street with long strides. He reached her just as she sat up, tears welling in her hazel eyes that mirrored his own with unsettling precision. "Hey there," he said gently, kneeling beside her. "That was quite a fall. Are you okay?" The little girl sniffled, examining a scrape on her elbow. "I'm not supposed to talk to strangers," she said, but her voice wavered with pain. "That's very smart of you," Ethan replied, maintaining a respectful distance while noting the intelligence in her gaze. "My name's Ethan. I'm visiting from San Francisco. Is your mom or dad nearby?" "Mommy's at the flower shop," she said, pointing vaguely down the street. "I'm Olivia. I'm 5 3/4. That's very grown up," Ethan said, smiling despite himself. "How about we find something to clean up that scrape? I think the hotel might have a first aid kit." Olivia studied him with surprising scrutiny for a child her age before nodding solemnly. "Okay, but we stay where people can see us. That's what Mommy says." "Your mom sounds very wise," Ethan replied, oddly touched by her caution. They walked to a bench at the edge of the park, clearly visible from all angles. Julian approached with a small first aid kit from the hotel, looking bemused at finding his boss tending to a child. As Ethan carefully cleaned the scrape and applied a colorful bandage, he couldn't shake the strange familiarity he felt. The shape of Olivia's eyes, the determined set of her chin, the way one corner of her mouth lifted slightly when she smiled, all triggered something deep in his memory. "Olivia." A woman's voice called out, panic edging her tone. "Olivia, where are you?" "Mommy," the girl called back, waving. "I'm over here. I fell, but this nice man helped me." Ethan looked up and the world seemed to stop. 5 years vanished in an instant as Vanessa Mitchell rushed toward them, her blonde hair caught by the breeze, her blue eyes wide with concern. She was more beautiful than he remembered, her features softened by motherhood, but unmistakably the woman who had walked out of his office half a decade ago. Time slowed as recognition dawned in her eyes, followed immediately by shock and then something harder, a protective fury that made her steps falter before she reached them. "Olivia," she said, her voice carefully controlled as she held out her hand to her daughter. "Come here, sweetheart." The little girl bounced up, seemingly oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. "Mommy, I fell off the slide and Mr. Ethan helped me. He has bandages with dinosaurs on them." Vanessa's eyes never left Ethan's face as he slowly stood, understanding crashing over him like a tidal wave. 5 years. Bridges rebuilt. The Harbor Street Cafe was nearly empty at 8 o'clock, most tourists having retreated to their accommodations for the night. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table that offered privacy, while still being visible through the large windows, a concession to Vanessa's likely desire for safety. His mind had been spinning since the afternoon's revelation. Fragments of memory assaulted him. Vanessa's words before she left his office. The pregnancy test results she'd tried to show him. The child, Olivia, with eyes so like his own that he should have recognized them instantly. How could he have been so blind? So selfish? The bell above the door chimed and Vanessa stepped inside. She had changed from her work clothes into jeans and a simple blue sweater that matched her eyes. Her hair was pulled back, revealing the delicate features he had once traced with reverent fingers in a different lifetime. She spotted him and walked over, her posture wary but determined. Without greeting, she took the seat across from him. "Is she asleep?" Ethan asked, searching for a neutral beginning. "Dorothy's watching her," Vanessa replied. "She's probably convincing her to read just one more story right now." A waitress approached and they both ordered coffee, the mundane exchange providing a momentary buffer against the conversation that loomed. When they were alone again, Vanessa spoke first. "Why are you in Pinewood Cove, Ethan?" "It can't be a coincidence." "It is," he assured her. "I'm here for a potential acquisition, WavePoint Technologies. I had no idea you lived here." He paused, gathering courage. "She's mine, isn't she?" Vanessa met his gaze steadily. "Yes, she's yours biologically. But in every way that matters, every skinned knee, every nightmare, every fever, every first, she's been mine alone." The words stung, but Ethan couldn't deny their truth. "She's beautiful," he said quietly. "And smart. I could tell in just those few minutes." "She is," Vanessa agreed, a softness touching her expression for the first time. "She's extraordinary." Silence stretched between them, filled with 5 years of absence and unspoken words. Their coffee arrived and Vanessa wrapped her hands around the mug as if seeking warmth. "I need to know what you want," she finally said, "because if you think you can just walk into her life and then disappear again when it becomes inconvenient, I won't allow it. She deserves better than that." The old Ethan would have bristled at her tone, would have reminded her of his power and position, but sitting here, confronted with the magnitude of what he'd thrown away, that man seemed like a stranger. "I don't know what I want," he admitted, the honesty unfamiliar but necessary. "I didn't know she existed until today, but I can't unknow it now." He looked down at his hands. "I was wrong, Vanessa. What I said to you that day, how I acted, it was unforgivable." "This isn't about forgiveness," she said, though her voice had lost some of its edge. "This is about what's best for Olivia." "Does she ask about me?" He couldn't help wondering. Vanessa nodded slowly. "She asks about her father. I've never lied to her, but I've been careful. I tell her that you weren't ready to be a dad, that it wasn't her fault. I've never spoken badly about you to her." The grace of this struck Ethan deeply. He had given her every reason to paint him as a villain, yet she had chosen a kinder path for their daughter's sake. "I'd like to know her," he said finally, "if you'll allow it. Not to disrupt your lives, but to be something to her. Whatever you think is appropriate." Vanessa studied him, searching for sincerity or calculation. "You have a life in San Francisco, a company. How would this work exactly?" It was a fair question, one he hadn't fully considered. "I don't know yet, but I can figure it out. My company has offices up and down the coast. I could spend time here, or," he hesitated, "we could discuss other arrangements." "She's established here," Vanessa said firmly. "Her friends, her preschool, our home, it's all she's ever known." "I understand that," Ethan replied. "I'm not suggesting uprooting her. I'm suggesting that I could change, adapt, find a way to be present without imposing." Vanessa's expression remained skeptical, but something in her posture softened slightly. "Why now, Ethan? Because you happened to meet her? If you hadn't come to Pinewood Cove, would you ever have looked for us?" The question cut to the heart of his shame. "I don't know," he answered honestly. "I told myself I'd made the right choice back then, that we were both better off. I buried myself in work and success until I almost believed it." He met her gaze directly. "But seeing her today, seeing you, I realize I've been running from something I couldn't outpace." The emptiness followed me everywhere. For the first time, Vanessa's eyes reflected something beyond caution, a flicker of understanding, perhaps even compassion. She had known him once before ambition hardened him, and maybe she could still see traces of that man. "I can't make any promises right now," she said finally, "but I won't keep her from knowing you if that's truly what you want. We can start slowly, supervised visits, getting to know each other gradually." Relief washed over him. It was more than he deserved, more than he had any right to expect. "Thank you," he said simply. "Don't thank me yet," Vanessa warned. "This isn't going to be easy. She'll have questions. She might be angry when she's older. And I won't pretend that the last 5 years didn't happen." Ethan nodded, accepting the terms. "I understand." They talked for another hour, Vanessa sharing stories about Olivia's first steps, her favorite books, her stubborn streak that Ethan recognized as his own. With each detail, the reality of his daughter's existence solidified, becoming less abstract and more precious. Before they parted, Vanessa pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of Olivia on her 5th birthday, blowing out candles on a homemade cake, her face alight with joy. Something broke open inside him. Regret mingled with a fierce, unexpected love for this child he barely knew. "I was supposed to be here for this," he said, his voice rough. "For all of it." "Yes," Vanessa agreed without accusation, just acknowledging the truth. "You were." Outside the cafe, the night air was cool and clear, stars visible above the small town in a way they never were in the city. Ethan looked at Vanessa in the gentle light of the street lamps and saw not just the woman from his past, but the mother who had built a life of love for their daughter while he chased empty success. "I'm staying at the Harborview Inn," he said. "I'll be in town for at least 3 more days. Whenever you think it's appropriate, I'd like to see Olivia again." Vanessa nodded, keeping a careful distance between them. "I'll talk to her tomorrow. Explain things in a way she can understand. Then we'll see." As she turned to leave, Ethan called after her softly. "Vanessa, you were right that day. I have regretted it, not the success or the money, but that moment in my office. Every day since." She paused, her back still to him, and for a moment he thought she might not respond. Then, almost too quietly to hear, she said, "It's not too late to be a father, Ethan. But you'll have to prove it's what you really want, not just today, but every day forward." As she walked away, Ethan remained standing under the starlit sky, facing a crossroads more significant than any business decision he'd ever made. The path ahead was uncertain, requiring humility and change and commitment he wasn't sure he possessed. But for the first time in 5 years, he felt something genuine stirring in his chest. Not ambition or pride, but hope. The empire he had built suddenly seemed hollow compared to the family he had never known he wanted. In the quiet streets of Pinewood Cove, surrounded by a life so different from his own, Ethan Sullivan finally understood what Vanessa had tried to tell him years ago. Some things were worth more than success. Some things, like the chance to know his daughter, to earn a place in her life, were worth changing everything for. Tomorrow would bring complications, adjustments, and difficult conversations. The bridge between them had been burned long ago, and rebuilding it would take time and patience. But as he walked back to his hotel, Ethan felt lighter than he had in years, guided by the memory of his daughter's smile and the possibility of redemption he had never thought to seek. Small steps forward. Morning light filtered through the curtains of Ethan's hotel room as he reviewed the acquisition documents for WavePoint Technologies. The words blurred before his eyes, his usual laser focus scattered by thoughts of Olivia and Vanessa. He had barely slept, his mind replaying yesterday's revelations on an endless loop. A text message from Vanessa appeared on his phone. "Playground at 11. Told Olivia you're an old friend who wants to meet her properly. Take it slow." His heart raced as he typed a simple reply. "I'll be there. Thank you." Julian entered with coffee and a concerned expression. "The development board is waiting downstairs for our meeting." "Are you ready, sir?" Ethan made a decision that would have been unthinkable 24 hours ago. "Reschedule for this afternoon, and move tomorrow's return flight to next week. We're staying longer than planned." Julian's eyebrows shot up, but he nodded. "Of course. May I ask why?" "Personal matters," Ethan said, suddenly protective of this fragile new connection. "Something I need to handle myself." At 11 o'clock precisely, Ethan stood at the edge of the playground watching as Vanessa and Olivia approached hand in hand. The little girl skipped beside her mother, chattering animatedly, unaware of the significance of this meeting. "Remember Mr. Ethan from yesterday?" Vanessa was saying as they drew closer. "He'd like to talk with us for a little while." Olivia spotted him and waved enthusiastically. "Hi, Mr. Ethan. Look, my elbow is better already." She proudly displayed her bandaged arm. "That's great," he replied, smiling despite his nervousness. "You must be a fast healer." Vanessa met his gaze over their daughter's head, her expression cautious but not unkind. "I thought we could get ice cream at the stand over there and talk for a bit." The three of them walked to a nearby bench, Olivia between them licking a chocolate ice cream cone that immediately began dripping onto her fingers. Ethan found himself instinctively reaching for napkins, his protective instincts surfacing without thought. "So, Olivia," Vanessa began carefully, "Mr. Ethan and I knew each other a long time ago before you were born." The little girl looked up, chocolate smeared on her chin. "Were you best friends?" Ethan glanced at Vanessa, unsure how to navigate this territory. She gave a slight nod, encouraging him to answer. "We were very close," he said gently, "but then I moved away to a different city for my job." "San Francisco," Olivia supplied helpfully. "That's where you said you're from?" "That's right," Ethan confirmed, impressed by her memory. "I live there now." Vanessa took a deep breath. "Olivia, there's something important I want to tell you about Mr. Ethan." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "He's your father." The little girl's eyes widened, her ice cream forgotten as she stared at Ethan with new intensity. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity as she processed this information. "But you said my daddy wasn't ready to be a daddy," she finally said, turning to Vanessa with confusion in her eyes. "That was true when you were born," Vanessa explained gently. "But people can change, and Mr. Ethan would like to get to know you now if that's okay with you." Olivia turned back to Ethan, studying him with a scrutiny that felt like judgment from the highest court. "Do you know how to make pancakes?" she asked suddenly. The unexpected question made Ethan smile. "I'm not very good at it, but I could learn." She considered this seriously. "Mommy makes them with blueberry faces. Can you do that too?" "I'd like to try," he replied, understanding that in the world of a 5-year-old, pancake-making skills might be a legitimate measure of parental potential. Olivia nodded, apparently satisfied with this answer for now. She returned to her melting ice cream, seemingly oblivious to the emotional weight of the moment for the adults on either side of her. The conversation that followed was surreal in its ordinariness. Olivia asked Ethan questions about his favorite colors, whether he liked dinosaurs, he did, and if he knew how to tie shoes. He demonstrated on his own. In between, she offered snippets of her own life, her best friend Emma, her favorite teacher Ms. Patterson, and the seashell collection she kept in a special box under her bed. Vanessa watched their interaction carefully, intervening occasionally but mostly allowing the connection to develop naturally. When Olivia ran to the swings insisting both adults push her, Ethan caught Vanessa's eye. "Thank you for this," he said quietly. "I know it can't be easy." "It's not," she admitted. "But she deserves the chance to know you, and you deserve the chance to know her." She paused, watching their daughter swing higher. "Just don't disappoint her, Ethan, that's all I ask." The weight of that responsibility settled on his shoulders, heavier than any business deal he'd ever negotiated. "I won't," he promised, and for the first time in years, he meant every word. Over the next few days, Ethan's life took on a surreal quality. Mornings were spent in meetings with the Wavepoint team, afternoons with Olivia and Vanessa. He visited their apartment above the flower shop, marveling at the warm, comfortable home they had created. He read bedtime stories, learned about Olivia's school projects, and began to glimpse the daily rhythms of a life that had continued without him. On his 5th day in Pinewood Cove, as he walked back to the hotel after dinner with them, his phone rang. It was his CFO in San Francisco, concerned about his extended absence. "The board is getting restless," the man said. "We need you back for the quarterly review." Reality crashed back in. His life was still in San Francisco, his company, his responsibilities, the empire he had built. Yet everything that now mattered to him was here in this small coastal town. That night, Ethan sat on the hotel balcony overlooking the darkened bay, contemplating choices he never thought he'd face. The path forward wasn't clear, but one thing was, he couldn't walk away again. Whatever it took, commuting, restructuring his company, even relocating, he would find a way to be part of his daughter's life. The next morning, he made 3 decisions that would change everything. First, he completed the WavePoint acquisition, but stipulated that the company would remain in Pinewood Cove as a satellite office. Second, he called a real estate agent about properties in the area. And third, he asked Vanessa to meet him for coffee. Alone. "I'm staying," he told her simply when they were seated at the cafe where they'd had their first real conversation. "Not just for now, but permanently. I'm establishing a regional office here." Vanessa's expression was guarded. "Because of Olivia?" "Yes," he admitted, "but also because I've realized something being here. The life I built in San Francisco, it's hollow. Empty success, meaningless achievements." He gestured around the small cafe. "There's more authenticity here in a day than in years of my life there. And what happens when you get bored with small-town life? When the novelty of being a father wears off?" Her questions were direct, protective. "I don't expect you to believe me without proof," Ethan said, "but I'm committed to this, to her, to building something real." He hesitated, "and maybe someday to rebuilding what I destroyed between us." Vanessa's eyes widened slightly. "Ethan, not now," he said quickly. "Maybe not ever if that's your choice. But I want you to know that I see clearly now what I was too blind to see 5 years ago. What truly matters." She didn't respond immediately, emotions flickering across her face too quickly to read. Finally, she said, "Small steps, Ethan. Let's focus on you being Olivia's father before anything else." It was enough. A beginning, not an ending. As they walked out of the cafe together, not touching but side by side, Ethan felt the first true peace he'd known in years. The future was uncertain, the path forward complex, but for the first time, he was facing it with courage rather than ambition, with hope rather than calculation. In Olivia's smile, he had found something worth more than all his success, a second chance he hadn't deserved but was determined to honor. And in Vanessa's cautious acceptance, he glimpsed the possibility of redemption, of a life rebuilt on stronger foundations than before. The bridge between them remained fragile, a work in progress that would require patience and proof. But as they walked through the autumn sunshine toward the flower shop where their daughter waited, Ethan Sullivan understood at last what true wealth looked like, and it had nothing to do with the fortune he'd amassed and everything to do with the family he was just beginning to know. "Lead the way," Jackson told Theo, who scrambled ahead down the winding path to the narrow strip of sand below. As they followed at a more measured pace, Priya hesitated, then spoke. "There's something I never told you. About why Naomi left." Jackson looked at her, bracing himself. "She was going to come back," Priya said quietly. "After Theo was born, she realized she'd made a mistake. She wrote you a letter, but before she could mail it..." Her voice broke. "The accident happened so suddenly." The revelation hit Jackson like a physical blow. All these years, he had lived with the certainty of Naomi's rejection, never knowing she had reconsidered, never imagining a reconciliation had been so close. "Why tell me this now?" he asked when he could trust his voice again. Priya's eyes were damp with unshed tears. "Because you deserve to know she forgave you. And because," she glanced ahead at Theo, who was examining a shell at the water's edge, "because I think I'm ready to forgive you too. For Naomi, for Theo, and maybe for myself." Jackson felt something long clenched inside him begin to release, a knot of guilt and grief loosening its hold. Without thinking, he reached for Priya's hand, and this time she let him take it. They walked along the shore, watching Theo dart back and forth with the enthusiasm only children possess. When he called them over to see a tide pool he'd discovered, they knelt together on either side of him, their reflections merging in the small mirror of seawater. "Look," Theo said, pointing to a tiny starfish clinging to a rock. "It was broken, but it's growing back." He looked up at them, his expression serious. "Ms. Henderson says that's called regeneration. When something gets hurt, but makes itself whole again." The simple observation, delivered with a child's innocence, struck both adults with its unintended wisdom. "That's right," Jackson said, his voice thick with emotion. "Sometimes the most amazing things can heal, even when it seems impossible." Priya's eyes met his over Theo's head, a world of understanding passing between them. They had both been broken in their own ways, by loss, by misunderstanding, by the weight of promises both kept and broken. And yet here they were, finding a way forward together. As the afternoon light began to fade, Theo ran ahead once more, chasing seagulls along the shoreline. Jackson and Priya walked side by side, their hands occasionally brushing, neither pulling away. "I've been thinking," Priya said after a comfortable silence. "Theo's birthday is next month. Maybe we could celebrate it together, not just an afternoon visit, but the whole day." "I'd like that," Jackson replied, feeling the significance of the offer. Then hesitantly, "And maybe sometime when you're both ready, you could come to my place for dinner? Nothing fancy, just family." The word hung in the air between them, filled with possibility. Priya smiled. A genuine smile that reached her eyes and reminded Jackson of another woman he had loved. Of promises both broken and renewed. "I think we'd like that," she said. "Family." Ahead of them, Theo had stopped to watch the sunset painting the horizon in brilliant oranges and pinks. As they joined him, he reached for both their hands, creating a chain that linked them together. "Mom would like this," he said simply. "All of us together." Jackson looked at his son, then at the woman who had raised him, who had kept Naomi's memory alive, who had gradually allowed Jackson into their world despite her own pain and doubt. The bridge between them, once so fragile, was growing stronger by the day. "Yes," he agreed, his heart full. "I think she would." As they stood together watching the sun sink into the ocean, Jackson felt something he hadn't experienced in years, a sense of completeness, of belonging. The wounds of the past would never fully disappear, but like Theo's starfish, they were learning to regenerate, to grow something new and whole from what had been broken. They were, all three of them, mending their hearts together,